We are back. It's Monday. It's my birthday, but it's conversations with Teresa. What 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 what? Hey everybody, I am so happy to be back with you on a Monday evening. We get another amazing Monday with wow, one of just a very phenomenal man. Just I can't wait for you guys to meet him. All right. So I'm gonna bring him. I think he's already on. You already on? Enin, are you here?
I'm here.
Dr.
I'm
Rudel,
here.
what's up? I am so excited to have you here on Conversations with Teresa. Thank you so much for coming on. And if you wouldn't mind, just for a couple of minutes, let me brag on you. All right. Can I brag on you for just a second? All
Please
right.
do.
I'm gonna do it anyway, because guess what? It's my show. I'm gonna do this. All right. This is gonna be good. All right. So, as you guys know, Conversations with Teresa, we get a chance to talk about three main things, but different things come in between all that. So, we talk about work-life balance, we talk about communication, and we talk about confidence. In today's podcast, we get a chance to talk to Dr. Rudel, Dr. Enin Rudel, about having difficult conversations. So as we were coming up with the title, all I could think of, you can't handle the truth, because sometimes having difficult conversations is hard. It's truthful. Those conversations are truthful, and sometimes the truth is hard. But Enin is going to break it down for us. I am so thankful. Okay, so now I'm about to brag on you. All right, so hold on to your seats, y'all. Okay, first of all, and I had to learn this. First of all, Dr. Enin Rudel holds a PsyD. Did I say that right?
You said it
A
right.
PsyD in organizational leadership psychology with a concentration in neuroscience of leadership. You know you're going to have to explain that. I'm just saying, you're just going to have to break that down. An MSW in clinical social work. You are a thought leader, an innovator in DEI. And the DEI that you have, it's rooted in the emotional intelligence. And then, as a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, you have an award-winning publication titled Emotional Intelligence, Organizational Social Architecture, and Black Leadership. What? Come on now. And I'm just so thrilled and awed to be able to talk about that. You might have to come back on another time just to even talk about just that piece of it, because that in and of itself is phenomenal. But hold on, I'm not finished yet. I got a couple more things to brag on you about. So, executive leadership coach at MIT School of Management. All right, I got you. Director of the Inclusive Leadership Psychology concentration at William James College. Senior consultant with IBIS Consulting Group, and founder and principal of EI Consulting LLC. But probably most notable is that you are just one of the smoothest, kindest, most thoughtful human beings that I know. So thank you for coming on to Conversations with Teresa. It's Dr. Rudel. Yay! How you doing today, Dr. Rudel?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation.
All right, let's get started. So, if I could just ask you in your own words, would you mind just explaining what you do? Like just on a,
Sure.
it seems like every day you're doing a little bit of something, all around this. You stir a big old pot, right? But
Mhm.
can you just tell us in your own words, what is it that you do? What's the impact that you make in this world?
So I'm going to back up for a little bit.
Okay.
I spent a number of years as a therapist working in large hospital settings, private and group practices as well. So I referenced that because there's a shift that happened in my career where I went from diagnosing people to then diagnosing systems.
Mm.
organizational psychologist, what I do is diagnose the system, the organization as a whole. So
Okay.
during time as a therapist, um, time after time, people would show up and they're talking about work. They're talking about, you know, uh, stress or challenges that they're experiencing connected to their community. They're talking about, you know, uh, any system that they are a part of and the emotions associated with that. And that got me thinking about the importance of understanding the degree to which we're all impacted by the
Yeah.
systems that we engage with. So, as an org psychologist, I have the privilege of doing this work on three tiers: um, local, national, and global.
Okay.
And so, what it looks like in any context is meeting with leadership of that organization to get some insight into what they feel the presenting problem might be. And then, for my part,
Yeah.
specifically, I am a dialogic practitioner. So I spent a lot of years studying the use of dialogue and listening as
Hmm.
tools for reaching places of shared understanding.
Okay.
So what I'll do, I'll have conversations. It's a fancy way of saying I have a lot of conversations. I take all this information that I've collected from these conversations and look for the themes that surface across all those conversations
Okay.
and then create recommendations based on those themes and hand those to the members of leadership teams.
And how does that usually fall when they are getting this feedback? I'm not sure all the different organizations that you have, but that's one of those moments. Can you handle the truth? How do they take
Yeah,
it?
yeah, that's a really great question. And I've had to I've had to work at delivering difficult and or challenging information in a way where it can be heard.
Okay.
And so, in terms of how folks take it, I mean, I've seen a broad range. I've seen CEOs um, want the honest feedback, no filter.
Okay.
I've worked with teams where it's been communicated to me I need to be very tactful, thoughtful, strategic in how I
Mm,
deliver the feedback as to not
mhm.
cause leaders to become defensive. I learned
Right.
this as a therapist. Excuse me, and I'm no longer practicing, but during the years that I was, when you want to give somebody less than favorable news, uh, beginning with either a compliment or something that's going to help ease that individual so that they lower their defense mechanisms.
Mm,
Same thing here.
there you go. There you go. So,
Mhm.
in your giving hard truths, having the telling people how to have the difficult conversations, you're navigating the difficult conversation right then and there
Absolutely.
from the
Absolutely.
start.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you're just teaching it as they go, teaching them
Mhm.
how to teach it to their peoples. So
Absolutely, and sometimes I'll name that as I'm doing it because I think it's important that
yeah,
they understand it's difficult maybe for them to hear,
yeah,
but I'm human too. It might be difficult for me to relay, especially in most of these instances. I don't know these teams. I don't know these people. I'm being
right,
bought in by the HR department,
right,
and it's not as if I have pre-existing relationships that I can lean on. you
yeah,
know so I think that kind of speaks to another really important part of holding difficult conversation, naming what you're experiencing in the moment. So
yeah.
for me, I'll say to an executive leadership team, this might be hard to hear, and it doesn't feel great being me in this equation either, delivering this. Of
Mm,
course I'll clean it up, but that's sort of the long or the short of what I'm delivering.
right. Oh my gosh. So I'm gonna throw this in here.
Mm,
Not this wasn't necessarily part of my plan, but as a black male, I'm gonna guess that you are not necessarily talking to a plethora of other Black males. How is
No. Yeah.
that?
Yeah, no, you know what? I think that's a great question, and it's a real question.
Yeah,
And so for me, there's two conversations happening almost all the time. There's the
right.
one that's on the surface, and then there's the one that I'm experiencing internally,
Yeah,
right? Where it's like, how do I sound? um do I sound competent enough? Do I All of this double consciousness sort of stuff is literally playing out as I'm trying to deliver these conversations.
right, right. And so, and you just, as being one of the thought leaders in this subject, you looking at you. There's probably only a few of you who you're
Mhm.
able to even go back and say, okay, what do you think about this? Or this is how I feel, or but you're working through all of these emotions as you're delivering it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I am sure that I am going to be the recipient of all of your knowledge and all of the wisdom somewhere along the line. So the next
Mhm.
organization I get to, I'm gonna make sure that you come and have those conversations. How about
I
that?
got you. I got you.
All right. So let me ask you this. Can you give an example? Well, let's see. What question do I want to ask first? Can you give us an example of like some common difficult subjects that people face? I mean, you go into all these different organizations and uh, corporations and things like that. Is there a common thread? Is there anything that most people have this issue and have in these conversations?
So right now, I mean, we could argue that it's been an issue forever and a day. uh but when George Floyd got murdered, the volume got turned up on the need for diversity within workforces.
Right.
So for most of these organizations, it's managing that need, understanding that need,
Mm-hmm.
and then being willing or not to act on it, to move on it.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, obviously to some people it's a little heavier than others. We all take it
Yeah.
a little different. I mean, I
Mhm.
remember being part of that organizational conversation
Yep.
about it, coming to the table, we're all there. And I'm like, I don't really want to talk about it with you.
Yeah.
Like that was that was me kind of
Mhm.
processing it. I'm like, it was an organization, it was actually a pretty diverse organization, but I hadn't processed it myself. I didn't really want to come to the group and
Yeah.
talk about it right then. I wasn't ready
Yeah.
right then,
Mhm.
and time is helpful, but learning how to navigate it and how to tell, my white counterparts and my Black counterparts, I don't want to talk about this right now. I'm not ready,
Yeah.
or even sometimes even feeling, I know during that time I was like, am I, because I'm not out protesting, am I Black enough? Am
Yeah.
I doing it right? Am I
Mhm.
saying the right things? Do I know all that? So many different things that we can go through.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely. And it would play out. It plays out in tears. So from leadership on down, folks are having these conversations in silos,
yeah,
or they may be at points where they can't engage in the conversation. But in either context, local, national, or global, this is a conversation right now.
yeah,
As people are becoming impatient with the idea of DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have now we're sitting in this sort of this interesting space, as in, right now, literally the last few months, 2023, where there's pushback around it. And now folks are kind of saying, listen, we were okay with it 2, 3 years ago. We understood the need. Um, but at this point in time, we want to move on. We want to now
Mm,
address other issues or concerns, regardless of where they might be
mm.
in terms of diversification on their teams.
And how does that sit with you when they're
Yeah,
ready? When
it's tough. It's
yeah,
tough. It's tough because I think, and again, this goes back to what you and I were talking about a moment ago, where there's those two conversations always happening for me. Another thing that I've noticed is, in some way, I'm doing this work with my own trajectory in mind.
yeah,
I'm remembering what it was like
yes,
coming out of undergrad and entering into my first job. And they were well intentioned, great organization, a very white organization. I
mm,
was the first employee of color in that role. Um, and so, even, now doing this work, in many ways, what I do, and I don't express this often, but I'll share this with you. Um, it's with where I've been in mind, with the hope that, maybe those coming up behind me,
yeah,
maybe they'll have a different experience.
mm-hmm. Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
forgive my pauses because it's all right. We
Oh
we
yeah.
talk about this stuff and we
It's
need a
real.
second. We need a second. So all right, all right. So let me ask you this: What do you think makes a conversation difficult?
It's a great question. I think it's the emotions that we attach to that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's the thoughts and feelings that we associate with that subject matter. Um, because we can talk about anything. We can have a conversation about the weather, whatever it is, right? But it's
Right.
in those moments where there's strong emotion attached to it. There may even be some serious implications connected to that conversation
Right. Right.
that raises the importance of that dialogue.
No, that is very true. So I'm going to go back to something a little bit more simple as opposed to the race relations and George Floyd, right? Um, Someone has food in their teeth. You're having a
Yes.
conversation, right? And you notice big old piece of broccoli just kind of hanging
Hmm.
there, right? Why is it so hard for someone to say, "You got broccoli in your teeth. Go take it out."
Yeah.
Why is that so difficult?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think many of those same themes, because check this out, right? If that person, they could be a manager, they could be
Mhm.
your boss, they could be someone that you really respect just in your day to day. You don't even work with them, you just hold them in a certain esteem. It might be embarrassing for you to say, and in your mind, you're thinking it might be embarrassing for them to hear. So there's that avoidance factor that begins to surface. And so the whole time you're sitting there, you're talking to the person, you're looking at them, you see it, but you don't want to say anything because you don't want to rock the boat.
Right. Right. So, what do we do? Do we rock the boat? Do you rock the boat?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
just say it.
Yep.
Good. Good.
You do, because that's how, um, I've actually heard of instances where people will respect you more when you share something that's difficult to say. They'll be
Right.
like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. I didn't even realize that. Thank you."
Right.
Right?
I don't
Yeah.
want to be going around the 5, 6 different
Nah.
people and come on now. Like, how come you didn't tell me? I'm
Exactly.
just, I'm just saying. So, all right. We actually have a question from one of our viewers, Audrey. And Audrey says, let's see, how do you suggest having a conversation with with coworkers who are really negative and don't seem to accept any positive comments on how to survive a toxic work atmosphere?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and a really but a really difficult scenario to be sitting in. We can't. So how do I say this? To hold any conversation effectively, there has to be a willingness for all parties that are involved to
Mhm.
engage on some level, and it makes it really difficult. How I'm making sense of this question is that in this scenario, there's an individual involved that's unwilling to engage. And I think that's
Mm.
what makes that really difficult. Like, we can't
Oh,
make people listen, nor can we make people engage. For all the best practices and strategies and approaches that I might know, uh, you know, 10 out of 10 are going to fall flat if they land on deaf ears.
oh, that's
You
true.
know, what I would say is, at a high level, maybe name what it is that you see when you're engaging with the person. Like, hey, um, you know, when we have conversations like this, my observation of you is blah, 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 right?
Hmm.
To reflect, almost like holding a mirror up to them.
Right.
So that in that split second, I mean, maybe they'll better understand how they're showing up, because oftentimes we don't know how we're showing up, right?
That's
val-
true.
right, right.
Yeah.
Validation is also a really helpful tool, where you attempt to see the situation through the lens of that person. Now, you're sitting in that situation with them, you're building that shared sense of understanding. And it's entirely possible that after sitting there long enough, you may actually be able to get them to begin understanding how their energy in that moment might be counterproductive, or how their perspective may not be entirely helpful. But you got to be willing to sit with them uh, until they're ready.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, no, that's right. And sometimes, especially I think at work, we don't have the luxury of being able to have this full on deep conversation. It's sometimes
Yeah.
it's in passing, sometimes it's just, grabbing some coffee or things of that nature. But
Mhm.
but you're right. And maybe having to visit this again and again, but also holding your own emotions intact, right?
Yeah,
To say, okay, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to keep doing this until that person's ready, if you're willing to do
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. I've seen people, and this goes back to my time as a therapist, show up and say nothing. And I would sit with them. I am not, I never feel the urge to fill silence with the sound of my voice.
Mm,
I will meet them where they're at. And this one
mm,
individual, we sat for almost maybe like 3 or 4 sessions with very little dialogue at all. But it took that long for this individual to take to the process. And then
okay.
I'll never forget, I don't know what made him laugh, but I remember laughing at the fact that he was laughing, and that ended up being a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And then we were able to sort of go from there.
Awesome. That's awesome. I love that. And that silence, it's not something that we all grow up with, or being comfortable with
Right.
that silence, especially now. I mean, you got social media, you got things coming at you, right? And so, yeah, that's tough. But Audrey says, thank you. And she realized that person wasn't ready to engage in that conversation. So it was a really good insight. So she thanks you for that.
Thank
So, let's see. Can you give us a few practical strategies for being able to have difficult conversations? And I'm thinking, particularly at work. Unfortunately, we spend far too long at work, right? That's just where we're at. And everything else gets broken up, right? We got these 8 hours, 9 hours that's at work, that's solid.
Yeah,
And then we got some time for family, some time for fun, some time for, outdoor activities and things like that. But that concentration and time, how do you have any strategies or just things that you could, I don't know, your top three? strategies for having difficult conversations?
Absolutely. And so what I'll break down are I'll offer up this one that has 6 parts to it
Okay.
because I find that it's easily digestible. It is something that I do want to point out that uh, I must have had just north of 5,000 therapy sessions. This was the tool that I gave out maybe 85 to 90% of the time.
Okay.
Uh, Couples, teams, families, leaders in different contexts for different situations, but all sort of linking back to how to hold difficult conversations. So,
Okay.
step one, evaluate where you are mentally and emotionally. A successful outcome is going to depend on 2 things: how you are, in terms of, are you centered? Are you focusing your energy towards being solution focused? So it's how you are and what you say. So
Okay.
pay mind to both of those two factors. Next, acknowledge emotional energy, both yours and the energy of the other person, and try to direct it towards a useful purpose. Number 3, and this is huge, know and return to your purpose at difficult moments. Someone in the equation has to recognize that that conversation has went off the tracks.
Hmm.
With that said, someone in that equation has to have it within them to name the fact that the conversation has went to the left. Okay, so, you know, you and I are here, we're talking about this glass. Why are we bringing up last year? Or 5 years
Okay.
ago, or 10
Okay.
years ago, right? Someone needs to name the fact that we're now not even talking about the original set of circumstances that led to the conversation. Number 4,
I'm so sorry.
yep,
I'm gonna just a quick
please,
question because I'm
yeah,
gonna write down all these and I'll post them.
yep,
That one that you just mentioned, number
yep.
3, that's hard.
That's
That's hard
really
for
hard.
me.
That's
Like
really hard.
I think about there's so many things that are attached to the conversation. If I'm having a challenging conversation, let's say if me and my husband are having a disagreement about something, a lot of times it's about that thing, but it's because maybe it's happened 4 times early in this week, and then maybe it's happened 25 times last month. And then, so you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that is so I just needed
yeah,
to say that's a tough one to stay on track.
it
Um,
is.
and only talk about that thing in silo. But I appreciate that you saying that.
It absolutely is, and so thank you though, in turn for teasing this one apart a little bit. I'm going to offer up a strategy that I used to talk to people about, and it's specific to knowing and returning to your purpose at difficult moments. It is always fair game to table the conversation until we are able to hold it in a less emotionally
Mm,
charged way.
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for myself, um, if I feel like I am, if I've escalated a bit emotionally, um, I might actually say that I need to take a minute. I need
Okay.
to take a minute in that, right now, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Right.
Okay.
And so simply uh, creating an opportunity to take a step back, collect yourself, and revisit the conversation from a less emotionally charged place can be really a really effective strategy. Now, what I will say, and I want to be very careful with this, I can share with you that when I would give this piece of advice to couples, like clockwork, and I really, I don't like that I have to bring gender into this. But my experience was, I'd say 90 to 95% of the time, it would be the male that would say that would take this advice, and then the next argument or next disagreement would either leave the house, get in a car, go for a ride, or walk out the room, or whatever it is, to take their space and their
Mm,
time,
mhm.
without then circling back to the conversation when they were at a less emotionally charged place. And so then what we would have is the next session, the man feeling proud that he walked away and he didn't get upset, and his partner saying, yeah, but I'm still sitting with, like, we never talked about it. We never addressed it. I'm still sitting with it. You came home acting now like it's all good, and it's not.
Wow.
So I offer up that taking space, very important. But the caveat is that you really should circle back when you can.
Right.
To have that conversation, right? Okay, so that's knowing and returning to your purpose at difficult moments. Yes. 4, we talked about, no, we didn't, I don't think I mentioned this yet. Nope. Don't take verbal attacks personally. That's equally as tough. That's equally as difficult. That is equally as difficult. It is. All right. It is.
And you got a lot of you must have a lot of teachings behind all this. I know that you just spit it out because I asked you, but I'm like, that's a whole other 45 minutes. Because it comes on like.
Yes. The one thing that I'll offer up around this is to understand that whomever you're engaging in conversation with in that moment may not be their best self in that moment. With that being said, you almost have to keep what they're saying to you in that moment in context, right? Don't meet them where they're at. You don't meet unhelpful energy with equally as unhelpful energy.
You're right.
Right. And so again, hard to do, but at any one of these points, it is fair game to take a step back. 5, don't assume they can see things from your point of view. What's also clear to any one of us at any given moment may not be to the other person, right?
Common sense is not common.
Exactly. Right? Like, so if I were to, I'm sitting here, this is my phone, I'm looking at an object. And in order for you to understand what it is that I see, you'd have to actually ask me. Because I'm looking at this side. You can't see this side.
Right.
You can see this side. Right? So if we apply this to any given situation, I think the takeaway here, create space and opportunity to reach places of shared understanding. Understand that your perspective may not be shared and or understood, and that's okay. Lastly, and this one is really important, mentally practice the conversation beforehand. So I would always, and I do this, full transparency. If you were to go through the memo pad on my phone, you're going to find more than a few bulleted items that are in direct reference to conversations I've either had or that are on the table to have, right?
Okay.
But this is a takeaway here. When you boil it down to 3 or 4 talking points, you increase the likelihood that the information is going to be heard in the way that you are hoping it will be received. Right? And it also prevents the conversation from going off track.
Okay.
So those right there, and I'm happy to send these to you. These are the 6 tips for holding difficult conversations.
That's what I'm talking about. 6 tips for holding difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And I, as my kids say, I ain't gonna lie, we might have to have you back on and talk about how to break some of these things down, because it's so true. And so thank you so much. Is there anything, and I know our time is running a little past, but is there anything else that you wanted to share? And is there a way for folks, if they wanted to get in touch with you, hear more about your, the presentations that you give, the lectures that you give? Is there a way that people can reach out to you too? So those 2 things, anything else that you might want to share? And is there a way that folks can reach out to you?
What I would share, just in closing, difficult conversations are difficult for a reason. It really does begin with reflection on 2 tiers. You got to do the self-work first, right? And you have to assess whether or not you're capable of engaging in a difficult conversation at that moment. But you should also, best practices say, you should leave some space to reflect on how the other person might be experiencing that moment as well. So
Yeah.
there's that. I actually don't have any social media accounts outside of LinkedIn, but what I would say is I would welcome anyone who's listening. Check me out on LinkedIn. That's typically where I post any talks that I have coming up, or anything that I'm working on.
Okay. Will we be able to see your article as well?
Absolutely. I can send that to you if you want
Sure.
to, share that with
Absolutely.
your audience. I am working on my next piece of literature. I was invited last week to write a chapter in a research book that's exploring use of emotional intelligence in the workplace. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
really, really excited about that. So stay tuned for that. That'll be out on the tail end of 2024.
Well, I follow you on LinkedIn, however way I can to follow you. I'm always very, very interested in what you have to say. But like I said, even before, how you say it, I tell you, you are the right person for this subject, not just difficult conversations, but just to be able to offer that emotional intelligence, that listening ear, that kind word. You're all that in a bag of chips. So I appreciate you to the fullest, and definitely wishing you continued success in everything that you do. So thank you so very much, Enin, Dr. Rudel, for coming on. And like I said, I'm very confident that I'm going to ask you to come on again because you touched on a lot of things, 6 things, at least, that we can definitely get into a little bit more. So thank you so much for coming on, and you're the best. We
Thank
look
you so
forward
much.
to we
Thank you for
look forward
having me.
to you guys continuing to come on for conversations with Teresa, and we look forward to seeing you guys next Monday. Have an amazing night. Thank you guys. Bye.